Welcome back to Sci-Fi Book Trek. Today we'll be doing spoiler talk for Isaac Asimov's I, Robot short story collection. Now, a short summary.
Introduction and framing device.
First of all, it starts off with framing device of a reporter going to interview Susan Calvin, who's retiring, and she's decided to tell a load of stories she probably shouldn't. But anyway, it starts off with
Robbie.
It's a nice, charming story about a kid with a robotic nursemaid called Robbie.
It feels like a stereotypical 1940s American family.
Mum is kind of racist and keeps trying to split them up. Kid keeps trying to find his friend, and Dad reconnects them after seeing the daughters find his friend, daughters find his friend, daughters.
Dental plan!
Lisa needs braces.
Continuing distress, at which point Robbie saves her during a workplace accident, and Mum finally relents. Happy ending.
Yes.
Runaround.
Introduces us to the two characters of Donovan and Powell, who are testing a new robot on Mercury. Also, it's the first story to have the 3 laws of robotics written down. This robot is acting erratically and it runs around the puddle and just won't come back to them. They try throwing grenades at it, doesn't work. So instead, one of them runs out there on another robot they have to be sat on because political reasons, and then almost dies, triggering the first law to take effect, causing the robot, which was going around in circles, to pick up the dying man and run him to safety and break him out of the cycle.
He was acting drunk, running in circles, and singing Gilbert and Sullivan. I thought that was worth noting because it made me smirk.
I mean, Asimov was a big Gilbert and Sullivan fan.
Yeah, I know, but acting erratically and singing Gilbert and Sullivan is the first part of Star Trek Insurrection.
Bosom should heave,
and his heart should glow,
and his fist be ever ready for a knockdown blow.
Reason.
Probably one of the standouts. Do you want to do it or do you like?
Can do.
No, I'll let you.
Powell and Donovan are back, and they are stuck on a space station which is directing an energy beam at Earth, which is collecting solar radiation. The robot that they are working with decides to join the Flat Earth Society. Any at all attempts at reason with the robot fail because all arguments are rebuffed with the equivalent of, well, Facebook said. However, things do manage to work themselves out as the energy beam that would cut a swathe of death across Earth is actually kept within direction and within focal point because the creator has spoken and the created wanted me to do that.
The path to robot heaven lies here in the Good Book 3.0.
Powell and Donovan just go, it's for the next guy to work out.
It's not our problem.
Catch that rabbit.
It's another Donovan and Powell story.
4 candles.
They get around these guys.
Yep, they're testing a new robot which has a main brain and 6 smaller robots. It sort of navigates and tells what to do. So it's sort of like the slave master and the slaves. And they're working on an asteroid, but for some reason, randomly, when the robot's not being looked at, it decides, oh no, I'm just going to go on a dance and do crazy stuff and not mine.
To be fair, the first thing that they think it's doing is actually marching in step.
Yes.
Goose stepping along.
I think it's the first part of a revolution.
Yes.
So they're slightly worried. But in the end, they sneak up on it, accidentally cause a cave-in, get trapped, and to solve it, they shoot one of the smaller slave robots to break the slave master, Dave, they've called him.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Out of his dancing sequence and come and rescue him.
Liar.
A robot develops the ability to read minds thanks to some sort of weird manufacturing defect, and so investigations ensue to determine how it happened, during which several characters get to talking with the robot, and the robot starts telling them, that person, absolutely, they're in love with you. That guy? Oh yeah, he's definitely leaving. And so, because of the nature of human intrigue and stupidity, not stupidity, stupidity's probably the wrong word.
Willing to buy what a robot says because, of course, it would have to be correct.
Yes.
They believe.
And so they buy into the stories that the robot is telling them, only to discover that in actual fact, none of this is true, and the robot has in fact been telling them white lies because, owing to the first law of robotics, it can't cause human harm, and it thinks that by telling the truth, it will cause them grief, which is that, therefore, causing them harm.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Which culminates in Susan Calvin, who has just been spurned by a person that the robot told her definitely is in love with her, comes in, puts the robot into the equivalent of lobotomizing the poor robot with a logical paradox because of being heartbroken. And, yeah.
And everyone learns not to mess with Susan.
Yes.
Little Lost Robot.
This involves Susan Calvin and Peter Bogart. And they are sent into sort of a military zone in space where they're trying to create a faster than light travel. All because one robot has gone missing. Not just gone missing, is actually hiding in another group of robots which look all identical. They only know he's there because there's supposed to be 33 and there's 34. So Susan and Peter have to find out which robot is hiding, or else all hell's going to break loose.
Yes.
One way or another.
Because these particular robots have a modified version of the first law of robotics.
Yes.
The one specifically that says, do not bring harm to humans.
What's the matter? You scared?
Or allow humans to come to harm.
And it culminates with the robot trying, but also failing, to kill Susan.
Now stand back, I gotta practice my stabbing.
Escape.
Where a super intelligent brain becomes a practical joker in order to escape the paradoxical ideas of creating a hyperspace engine that kills the crew.
I see this as an absolute win.
But then brings them back alive at the other end. So it's fine unless you think about it too much. So he escapes.
Don't think about it too much.
The next, well, it would be evidence.
Evidence.
This is, I won't say a political thriller. It's all determines this new candidate is trying to become elected mayor. And he's very good. He's an excellent person. Doesn't do anything bad.
He's never advocated for the death penalty. He's never advocated for unusual punishment.
And basically, his opponents can't really find any skeletons in his closet. So they go, oh, well, he must be a robot because we've never seen him eat or drink. Because that's the logical step you do. Not that this is a good person.
I don't think logic has anything to do with politics. And I think that comes across really well in this story.
Meanwhile, in our universe. Let me go ahead and show you this. This is the two ladies. And we've had doctors on about this. Her shoulders are too wide. She's on like the 100th percentile of women, okay, with her body type. Her arms, everything. She always has this pooch, like she's wearing either a codpiece or has genitalia. Okay? Now, she looks like a man.
And it goes into, could he disprove that he's a robot? Or does he just ignore what people say? And it culminates into events which firmly tell you what he is, but in a nice and charming way.
I mean, I didn't get that impression. I thought it was left quite vague at the end.
No, I think it's quite, which way it is. For me.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it can be vague. It depends how you read it. But yeah. Anyway.
The inevitable conflict.
The last one would be the inevitable conflict.
I am inevitable.
Evitable conflict.
The inevitable.
I kept making that mistake when I was trying to read the damn thing. An interesting story. It's more like a coda to round out the set of short stories. As I've already mentioned in the non-spoilers, I don't think it would have sat well as a single standalone, but it does a good job at concluding. So, humanity's doing okay, but there are some minor discrepancies that really shouldn't be happening when all of humanity is essentially running on the say-so of 4 supercomputers called the machines. So there's an investigation, and the investigation brings our man, what was his name? Byerly. Brings Byerly to the conclusion that someone is interfering with the way that the robots are working, and that it's the anti-robot leagues that are still working in concert to try and bring the robots down and try and remove trust in them. And so he has a talk with our friend Susan Calvin, who assures him that no, actually, it's all part of the plan.
Because it's all part of the plan.
Because slowly but surely, the machines are actually allowing humanity to make those mistakes, but it's also quietly removing those elements from any position of power from which they can do the most damage, while still maintaining the idea that their efforts are having an effect. But that was my take on that.
The Evitable Conflict 2, Electric Boogaloo.
My take would have been the machines are siding with the Luddites, the fundamentalists, in a similar way, but they're seeing that their effect, them causing stability everywhere, is having a negative effect on humanity growing as a culture.
Did you know that the first Matrix was designed to be a perfect human world? It was a disaster. No one would accept the program. Entire crops were lost.
So it needs to
allow imperfection.
Allow imperfection so the humans can start managing the situation again for themselves, and so take them out of the situation. Well, yeah, that's how I read the. It was just
we had
the
two
machines
different
knew they were
takes.
harming humanity by keeping everything stable.
Would you at least agree that it ends on a hopeful note?
Yes.
As opposed to the "I'm trying to murder you."
Oh, well,
at the middle of the book.
I say hopeful as opposed. Well, I think one of the last sentences is, end Susan's death.
Mm.
So
it's an ultimate conclusion to life.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to loves and hates?
Yes. Well, I'm not 100% sure. I think it's mostly going to be loves.
Pretty much.
I mean, what would you say is your standout story?
I think Evidence is my standout story. That was the one that I got the most involved and the most intrigued with. Not to say that any of them are particularly bad stories. Evitable Conflicts feels like more of a conclusion to the book.
Yeah.
So
it's a wrap-up story more than anything, yeah.
Yeah. Escape feels like a bit of fluff.
Yeah, but fun.
It's fun, yeah. Like I say, it's almost like a palate cleanser. Certainly from Lost Little Robot.
I have been found out.
But I mean, you can understand sort of like the odd reasoning.
I mean, that brings me on to Reason, in fact, because I thought that was another standout bit of writing. Trying to convince this robot that we made you, we are your creators, you must listen to us.
I am your god. Okay. Turn this into a woman.
Halfway through, and they're still trying to argue like logic and reason with him. And the robot just goes, oh, I understand why the creator made you believe that.
It's like
It's for your simple minds. Oh, I understand now. Why the books say what they do? It's for you. Oh, and not there for me.
yes.
It's just like, oh my god.
The creator made these books so that you would believe has the same energy as God put dinosaur bones in the ground to test our faith.
Yeah. If you've ever had a conversation with someone who's devoutly religious, oh, it does feel like that.
You know, because that was when I had been indoctrinated to believe in dinosaurs and believe that the paleontologists were not lying scumbags.
What the fuck? This woman has 3,000 subscribers.
But yeah, I did like Reason a lot. That was because he had that like tinge of sort of comedy as well.
Well, that was the thing. I think Powell and Donovan come across to me as Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, I can see that.
They were fun characters to be around.
Your plastic pal is fun to be with.
You could always come back to Calvin as far as, you know, when you knew there was going to be a bit of seriousness, Calvin would be the character that you would tend to follow. But it didn't come across as schizophrenic either. That was the interesting thing. I suppose them being short stories, it sort of prepares you a little bit more for the fact that there is going to be great deal of tonal switching between the different stories. If they'd have been chapters, perhaps it would have been like suddenly we've gone from, you know, this person tried to kill this robot tried to kill Susan. Milk and beans.
But also, it still feels like it's all within the same world. They are all connected,
and that's also an you know, to be able to knit together all of those stories and still maintain a cohesive narrative. That's something that does take some doing. Fair play to Asimov, he managed it.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favourite stories, I mean, apart from Reason, which I did like, would be Liar. I really did like that. Just with it's just the mind games of like, well, this is a robot. He has to be telling the truth. Initially, everyone's going like, yeah, he has to be telling the truth. And then like it slowly dawns on you because Barry's hints, because you do see, you know, from different characters. So these hints that what the robot's saying is not necessarily the reality.
Yeah.
So you get these hints early on that there's something going on here. This isn't just a robot who can mind read.
There's a touch.
There's something odd happening.
I mean,
and like when Susan works it out, it's like, yeah, fair play to her. She's worked out more than like any of the others. She's found out why. And then she just lets her wrath take control.
Oh, yeah.
And just annihilates the machine.
I mean, maniacally takes it apart. It's like, you fucked with me, robot.
I think
you broke my heart. Now you're going to die.
Because at some point she just maniacally laughs, doesn't she? It's like, jeez.
It's like, I've seen this on Yandere Simulator.
But it's like the first sort of sign you get of, because Susan's like normally cold and
logical.
Logical. It's the first sort of like emotion she really gets, but you understand why. It's because the robot has been sort of toying with her emotions in like not a malicious way, but in the only way it knows how to respond.
But it's trying to save her from the grief of reality,
Yeah.
and in doing so, it makes it even worse.
Yeah.
It's
and like it's very
commentary
well
on white
told.
lies.
Yeah. It's very well told. I do like it. And yeah, I mean, there are some other ones. Like I do like Little Lost Robot. I just like the fact, they made these robots with the first law a bit iffy, just to stop robots pulling researchers out of experiments that may theoretically be dangerous and stopping the experiment. It's like, no, stop. We need robots, but you need to stop saving us.
Yes.
I do like that similar idea, and like the command he gives them to just get lost. And the robot goes, right, I'll do that. That's my number one priority now, to get lost.
Yes. You gave me permission.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the way that across certainly the ones with Miss Calvin in the way that Asimov has set up these laws at the start, the 3 immutable laws of robotics, and then sort of uses the psychology element and almost even the legal sort of. It's almost like he's lawyering himself. It's like, okay, I've set these up. They're immutable laws. Now, how can I kind of go around the side? And that's what each sort of story is about. Like a way of sort of, how do I break this? How do I fuck with the DM, who is me?
For the stories I don't say I didn't like, but for the stories I was like, probably the same for you. It would probably Catch that rabbit. And like you forgot it.
I forgot it when I was writing this. When you said about Dave, and I'm like, oh yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That probably for me was one of the most forgettable stories, admittedly, because they'd already done something similar with Runaround.
Yeah.
It's a similar sort of premise and a similar sort of story.
Yeah.
And the fact that it still features Powell and Donovan was a thing as well. There wasn't much different going on to that story. At least from my perspective.
Yeah, like that's probably the same for me as well. Because that one felt a bit flat-ish for me. Probably because he was so close to Runaround. But yeah, I mean, like, Runaround I wasn't particularly a big fan of. As well. I mean, he was nice, but I felt, oddly enough, he dragged a bit. Although, it was nice finding about, the older robots.
That possibly is where it would have... If I was going to cut that story down, I probably would have taken that section out. But then having the older robot walk toward... Because they're supposed to have a rider at all times.
Yeah.
It has to have a rider at all times because of the political reasons of operation, which I can't remember at the moment.
Because they were trying to get so like the robots wouldn't be banned on Earth.
Yes.
So it was like, oh well, it's perfectly safe because they all have to have riders. But like the law still went through and they banned all robots from on Earth.
But it was interesting to see that even when the guy puts himself in danger, even that robot, Rogue One still
applies.
It started to move towards him to pick him
and
up.
He has
and
to run away.
No, stop. Fuck off.
I don't need your help. But yeah, I mean, is there any stories which you maybe didn't like? I mean, other than Runaround?
No, I didn't have any issues with any of them. The only, the only ones that I've really mentioned have been Escape, which is harmless fluff, and evitable conflicts, which
Yeah.
I think was more of a conclusion. So
Yeah.
they're the only two that I would have said would have been the weakest of the bunch, but even then, they weren't a problem. I
Well,
still
like-
like the stories.
Yeah, the last one, the conflict. That we read two different things into it, slightly.
It's
So that
kind
was-
of interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know whether one of us was near sleep or not, because I don't know. I think I read that while I was nodding off, but also, pretty sure, I don't know.
I was in the bath.
Oh well.
Not supposed to nod off in the bath, so
Yeah, I wouldn't take a book into a bath, but that's me. Anyway, we'll go on to nitpicks, although that might be tiny.
yes, it is likely to be a very, very short section.
I take it you've got one nitpick?
I have one nitpick, and it's not even really a nitpick, it's more of an implication. And it's that implication in the in the evidence story, the
Right.
implication that is created at the end of it is that
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
what's his name? Biley.
Yeah.
So Biley is accused of being a robot. There's this whole thing where he calls a press conference. He's called to the press conference, and a guy jumps the stage and says, "Hit me! Hit me! You can't hit me because it'll invalidate the rule 1 of the laws of robotics." And Biley's like, "But I don't want to hit you." And eventually he just gets to the point and decks the guy, knocks him clean out. So this guy's carted off stage, and it's proven to the crowd that it's, oh, well, he punched him, so he must not be a robot. He's just violated the first law. And then Calvin says later, well, there is one way that you could have violated the first law, and that's if that guy was a robot. And the implication is, like, for me, because I fully believe that Biley was a robot. That is the implication that I choose to believe.
Because that's what she insinuates.
Yes. But then that also implies that this poor guy has been created for the sole purpose of, you are going to jump on stage and you're going to get smacked by one of your fellows, and that is your purpose in life. It's like that robot that Rick creates in Rick and Morty.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Your sole purpose is to get punched in the face by this guy.
But I mean, like, even some of the other robots, it's like, oh, well, you've got to play nursemaid. Oh, you've got to mine asteroid.
I mean,
It's like,
that's fair. It's just, I thought it was funny as far as an ethical consideration. It's like, yep, just get on stage and get punched out by this dude. It's like, I fulfilled my purpose. Pop.
The only sort of nitpick I could imagine was probably from the first one.
From Robbie, yeah.
When she, like at the end, she slips into like the manufacturing area, and she's about to be run over by that like
forklift, yeah.
Yeah, forklift. Robbie's the only one who runs over.
Yeah.
Even though there's a number of other robots there.
Not a single one of them react. Yeah.
They're like, well, we're building robots. I mean, but yeah, anyway, I think that wraps up for nitpicks.
On to
Time
final
shorts.
thoughts.
Final thoughts, though. What?
Yeah,
Anything?
I haven't changed my mind. I highly recommend. I think it's worthwhile getting a copy of this, and probably worthwhile getting a hard copy of this. I wouldn't relegate this to a Kindle. I think get yourself a hard copy and put it in your bookshelf.
It's well worth reading. There are some bits which you could see as tiny bit dated, like the family from Robbie does feel like 1930s, 1940s American
nuclear
family sort of thing. So some can feel a bit oddly dated. but in like a charming way. It's still nice, and it doesn't detract from the stories in any way. Do you want to do a bit about adaptations?
Again, the adaptation with Will Smith is probably a big one.
The first one, Harlan Ellis, he wrote a script roughly on like this book, like the iRobot series. That was going to be filmed. It went through a number of stages, but that is pretty close to it. He does insert Susan into more stories than she's actually in.
Yeah.
Because it makes more of her character. From what I understand. But that did not get made into a film eventually. But the script was released.
Yeah.
And sold, I think in 2004 you could buy it.
Was it an illustrated screenplay?
Yes, it's called iRobot, the illustrated screenplay.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be quite good. As opposed to the Will Smith iRobot one, which was really a script called Hardwired. And it used elements from Asimov stories and from the Caves of Steel, another Asimov story. Like the detective part. But ultimately, it fails to be a true Asimov one just because the robots are just there killing people and like they're very sort of a logical thing.
You know what they say, laws are made to be broken.
And also, Susan Calvin just, what the fuck?
Yeah, I thought so.
Like, I mean, Susan Calvin's in the story's badass. She's the best person in the stories. The film, it's just like, oh, I'm the love interest. It's like, oh, jeez. Really? I mean, I would make the joke, someone needs a slap for that, but...
I did read that the evidence, one of the stories was optioned by Orson Welles, and he wanted to turn that into a full screenplay, but I don't believe it ever got further.
I mean, some of them have, like, I think Liar's been adapted, because the BBC did some versions in, I think I want to say the 60s, but they have all, like, they did 2 of the stories. They have been wiped. They don't exist, like, there's no...
Lost in there.
Yeah, lost.
Auntie's Bloomers.
Although one of the robots built for it does appear in a Doctor Who episode.
Oh, neat.
So.
I mean, Doctor Who refers to the Asimov's laws a few times.
I mean, a number of things do.
Yeah, I mean, they formed the basis of a lot of science fiction regarding robots.
Yeah.
The positronic brain, as you've said earlier, is basically how data runs.
Yeah.
I mean, these stories did go on to, or at least Asimov's laws went on to inspire an awful lot of additional fiction, so you could call those adaptations if you really wanted.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably about as influential as H.G. Wells' Time Machine for, like, Time Traveller. This is 2 robot stories.
So what you're saying is now I need to find the porn parodies.
They're probably out there.
Hello everybody, I'm just going to cut in with a section that I haven't done since the Time Machine review. Yes, I'm talking about the parody versions.
Allow me first to apologise for this emergency channel.
So we'll start off with I, Robot Valentine. Obvious joke, but I did get a chuckle out of batteries included. We have I, Sex Robot, which appears to be a great advert for the AI chatbots that YouTube has been pushing at me for the last several months. So glad that we can have heavy restrictions on video content, but adverts can be loaded with smut.
their way.
It's Chancellor Sutler.
Yes, I know what targeted ads are. Shut up. Sexcom Chapter 4. I happen to like the XCOM games. Ooh, titled iRobot, which amusingly has the 3 laws of robotics stamped on the cover, and includes the 4th law. Disappointingly, it's not something like robots must attend to human needs, or something equally amusing.
You designed it, sir. You wanted it foolproof. You told me every television in London.
And finally, we have the most depraved of the whole group. I'm honestly quite surprised that Amazon would agree to sell this one. Peter Crouch's autobiography. Oh, for shame, Peter. If you're going to rip off the name, the least you could do is grow a decent set of mutton chops in honour of Asimov.
Right, I think we'll end it there. And next week, we will be reading
Larry Niven's The Patchwork Girl.
So, join us next week for a review of that.
And hopefully it goes better than Catface.
Bye.
Bye. Almost is like yes, I burnt down this orphanage. Ah, cool. That's neat. The orphans were all in a different room, but good for you.